Well, thank you so much, Alaya. And while she is putting those great resources into chat, I will introduce myself. Good evening. My name is Katie Frederick, and I work in the APH ConnectCenter and am delighted to be hosting career conversations this evening. Typically, my colleague and friend Richard Rueda is the host, but he is off training with a new seeing eye guide dog. So we wish him and his four-legged partner all the best. And I get to be the star of the show tonight. Well, I'm not the star. I'm just here. You know, the star is our guest. So I will introduce her in a moment. But I am delighted to be here to have a chat with our guest and to invite you to submit your questions in the chat as well, because while we will have a bit of a conversation here in the beginning, we do want this to be a dialogue where you ask questions as well. So if you have questions or comments, do feel free to put those in the chat. With that, I would like to introduce our guest for the evening. And this woman is someone that I've had the pleasure of meeting recently and hearing her speak on different occasions, and just an asset to the community. So our guest this evening is Gena Harper. And I'll just read a little bit of her bio before we dive into the conversation. So Gena was born with congenital glaucoma, but that doesn't stop her from motivating others and pursuing her dreams as well. Gena is one of the few people who are blind who work at Morgan Stanley as a financial professional, and there aren't a lot of blind financial professionals in the United States. So Gena is a certified investment management analyst and an investing with impact director with a designation which recognizes advisors who are leaders in delivering holistic portfolio management for clients in corporate investing. So that's a lot, and we will get more into that as well. But along with her business partner of more than 3 years, Gena provides custom financial planning for her clients and simplifies it so that even the most complex situations can be understood. And I definitely would need that service. So with that, I want to say welcome, Gena, and thank you for joining us this evening on Career Conversations. It's great to have you with us, and just really happy to have you here. Would you mind telling us a little bit more about yourself and your role?
Yes, thank you for having me as a guest, and I really think it's important what APH is doing, having these different career conversations. I think these kinds of conversations actually make a difference in people's lives and help give them direction. And your question was, what do I do in my role? I do very complex financial planning for individuals, and that consists of doing the marketing to get the clients, doing the analysis with the client, like a plan, sort of designing a plan for them. Then once the plan is designed, we actually do all the research for the investments and we implement the plan. Then we do ongoing monitoring of the plan, and then there's constant checking in with the client. And the reason what we do is complex is we don't just address like stocks, we address people's retirement plans or kids' college savings, if they have insurance needs, if they have a mortgage, or if they want a mortgage. So it's both of deal with what they have now and also help them to reach their goals and objectives throughout their lifetime.
Great. I think that's something we can all need to take part in. What do you think? So, you talked a little bit about your role, but so how would you kind of describe maybe a typical day, or what are some of your day-to-day activities?
A typical day for me is pretty crazy because we have a lot on our schedule. So there's actual client meetings. Then there's we need time to prepare for the client meetings. Then there's do all the follow up after the client meeting, a lot of phone calls, a lot of analysis of information, as well as keeping up with what's going on today. Did Tesla make an announcement, or did, something happen in the United States or Europe? So all sort of global macro issues that are current, because our clients are hearing this on the news and the stock market is affected by things like that. So you have to be super prepared to manage your clients, as well as be realistic about what really matters and what doesn't, because there's a lot of noise out in the world right now.
Absolutely. I'm sure that's quite the
Challenge.
challenge, sorting through all that noise.
It definitely is the challenge.
Yes. So I know that I did not include this in my introduction, but I am an individual who is blind, and so I'm actually reading these questions, using my braille display as we move along here tonight, and it's grateful to have braille and technology in my world. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the technology and adaptations that you use on the job? And I'm sure that there have been some adaptations. I know for me personally, just dealing with financial things of my own in my own life, there are definitely some shall we say challenges in that space, right, from a blindness perspective. So
Oh, absolutely. So in my job, I use JAWS. My vision has worsened in the last number of years, but I have been visually impaired since I was born. When I was a teenager, I used more CCTVs and things like that. But now I can't use CCTVs. Now I'm totally blind. So I use my JAWS. I am a very weak braille display user. I want to get better. It's just in my job, it really is chaotic. There's very little time in my life to take on a new learning of a braille display. And for my job, a braille display, the way the systems work, it was constantly pumping out data about the stock market. It's just a live feed, and there was absolutely no way to manage that. So of course that got shut down. Right. Then I use a couple individuals that are assigned to their sole job is to help me. There's only 2 blind women financial advisors in the entire United States, not just at Morgan Stanley. So the 2 of us share a couple people who basically will take complex reports and convert them to whatever we want, be it if we wanted a Word document or turned into an outline. So there are humans behind the scenes, because it's not possible to make all this data accessible, and then it's not time efficient for me to read a 90-page report.
Yes.
So that's so mostly it's JAWS, a lot of technology skills using my computer, a lot of memorizing, and again, I am going to incorporate a braille display into the mix.
Great. Well, I'm happy to hear that. As I said, it's important, but I understand how that can be, especially with something constantly refreshing as the stock market. That would be very distracting. As well. And I just want to go back to something that you said that causes me to pause. You said there are 2 blind financial
women.
Yes, that are financial planners in the United States.
Yep, that's it.
Wow, that's
I know.
So I guess to follow up on that, can you talk a little bit about what made you go into that role, and how did you get where you are?
I was dealing with a lot of sort of shame and embarrassment about blindness when I was in, just growing up basically. And I really thought, well, I can't be anything good, and everybody who can see is better than me, and they're going to be better at everything than me. And I tried really hard, and I was in a place where I could see better than being blind, but I couldn't really see well enough to see. And I did also not have good support services, and I was rebellious, so I wouldn't use a cane. And some of my problem was me. A lot of my problem was me. And then I had to go to an independent living center. For me, I would highly recommend that. That changed my life. To this day, that has changed my life, where I learned how to use a cane and read braille. And it was an interruption. I had to go in the middle of college. It was a disruption, I should say, but the best thing that could have happened to me. And there, my view changed a bit. I started meeting a number of blind professionals and people that I deemed cool. I was very judgy. And so it was nice to meet the cool blind people and the blind people with good jobs. And then I started, like, my self-esteem started improving. They also offered a lot of extracurricular activities, which I was not able to participate in at all. I was raised in Fresno, and there were not specialty groups and a goalball team and this and that. That just
Mhm.
didn't exist. So I went crazy like a woman that'd been let out of prison, and I signed up for skiing and rock climbing and rafting and windsurfing and anything on the list. Sign me up. And that was also life changing for me. I became a downhill, like a world class downhill skier. I got second place out of 5 countries in downhill skiing. And that led me to a lot of notoriety. I was on TV shows and I did a lot of talking at say, the Rotary Club and the Lions Club and things like that.
Mhm.
And a random stranger just came up to me and said that I would be a great financial advisor. And the situation was, at that time, I had dropped out of college because I got an incomplete from a professor. And if I knew now what, I mean, if I knew then what I knew now, like, that would not have happened. But I was kind of like, screw them. They shouldn't have that kind of power. It was because I had to have an eye operation, and that pissed me off.
Mm.
So I just decided I wasn't going back to college. And I did go get some specialty training to be a word processor. And long story, because we have limited time, just through meeting this stranger and through offering to volunteer at some financial services firms to see if I liked the job and if I would enjoy it. It just basically turned into one networking opportunity to another. And I found an advisor who was well established, like senior management at a firm, that actually wanted a business partner to help him on some of his lower end clients. And I needed training, and I was all gung
Mhm.
ho. So it came about in all that long way.
That's fascinating, and I'll come back to some of that again. But you mentioned here, we are talking career conversations with you, Gena, and you mentioned networking, and that's I know that's so important, and it sounds like you definitely um, had to do that getting started in your field for sure. So
Yeah, and I've been thinking about this conversation since you guys asked me to do it, and that some of these things are kind of, they're the sexy cliche thing like networking, but it is really the real
mhm,
tool. And I did not have the self-esteem, but I did it anyway. So a couple of things I wanted to share was, I view networking and doing what you have to do to get a job, even if you're young and don't have experience, as dialing for dollars, actually. And that if it's going to take 99 no's to get a yes, no matter what, no
mhm,
matter what it is, pretty much. And so you can't get emotionally attached every time somebody tells you no. And it's easier said than done, but it really isn't easier said than done. Like, you just
mhm,
have to make the call, know you're going to get no's, and keep calling, because at some point somebody's going to give you a chance. And then, so that's just calling like random strangers or applying for different jobs. And then there is the networking, where I remembered that there was a couple guys that went to a church that I went to that were financial advisors. So I called them, and not only did I wasn't exactly networking, I asked them for an informational interview and what did they really do at their job. So I did a lot of my homework even early on when I was interested in something.
mhm. Right. That's so crucial. And I just want to pause here and remind people that if we Gina and I are having this chat, but we welcome hearing from you as well. So if you do have questions, feel free to put those in the chat, and we will get to those here soon. I guess kind of along the lines of we touched on this, so but what are some of the what's some advice you would have for those young adults who are job seeking and they might be feeling discouraged.
It's very easy to feel discouraged.
Mm.
There's kind of this concept that I use of, you just walk the talk even if you don't really feel like it, or it doesn't feel genuine or sincere. So a lot of new people, including me, when I started before financial advising, I had to take risks. I applied for a volunteer job at a hospital, and they have these today, but a lot of people don't know about them, called Candy Stripers. So you're
Hmm.
volunteering, you're trained at the hospital, and you do different jobs, like bring people their food or clear the trays. And there's a lot of jobs. And I knew that I wasn't going to be capable of doing all the jobs, but I could do some. My vision was at a level that a number of the things I could do, I could walk independently. And I couldn't read at that time. So any job that involved reading, I was just honest with him right up front. And I just said, like, any part of this volunteer work that involves reading is not the part for me.
Mhm.
And when you're volunteering, of course, you have a bit more control, right? You're not getting paid, but
Right.
I still use those same skills. So my advice would be to anything you're interested in, to make a list of, say, your neighbors, your teachers, your friends' parents who might know something about the thing you want to be doing, and then call them up. And I assure you that most people are generous with their time and caring and want the friend of their child, for example, to succeed. So
Mhm.
if you ask them, could you have an informational interview about their job, that they would be happy to grant that to you. And so I personally would recommend that is how you create your circle of who to network with. So again, your neighbors, just people you know, then your friends' parents, I think, are very important. And then not to be afraid to call them and reach out to them, and not just the informational interview. Once you have it and once you decide you might be interested, to say, oh, can I shadow you at work? Would it be okay if I just followed you one day? Or do you have any volunteer work I can do? I can answer the phones, or I
Mhm.
can stuff envelopes. Things like that, I think, would get people a long way, even if they're discouraged. Long as they keep calling, though. If you stop calling, like, you're not going to have any luck.
Right. I know I that it is easy to become discouraged, but we have to keep on trying, right?
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
um, I want to pause here for a second and see, Alaya, do we have any comments or questions in the chat here on Career Conversations?
Nothing yet so far.
All right. Well, I know this is interesting, but if you do have questions, again, feel free, or comments, to put those in the chat, and we will address them as we go along. Um, I know, Gena, you talked about, the networking that you did and things, but from, I guess, from a blindness perspective, going into the financial planning, I'm sure that required a lot of, kind of planning on your part in terms of, problem solving skills, right? And trying to figure out how to do the work. Do you want to, talk a little bit about that? How when you first started out, I'm sure you had a lot to deal with
Figure
in
out.
this. Yes.
Yeah, problem solving is the perfect word. That's what I would call what I did then and what I constantly do in my life, because I'm not one to go with the status quo. I'm always dreaming up some new thing I want to do that's not normal for a blind person to do. And so problem solving, I did try, to understand what was involved. And in the beginning, I did still was dealing with my embarrassment. And at the time, I had a CCTV and I used Sharpies, but I still was worried that, somebody would judge me or that I would have a hard time. But I did have this partner who was senior, and he was very kind and he was a wonderful coach. And I did work really hard though. So I had my own office, and I did, at the time, I had like Zoom text. I don't know if it was Zoom text at the time, but
Mm-hmm.
same idea, on my computer. And I would work extra hours, but I would not meet clients ever in person in the beginning, because I was afraid they'd want to fire me or not have me manage their money, to think I couldn't do the job. So I decided, because a lot of financial advisors, well, all of them in the beginning, you pretty much do call people on the phone. It's not, you don't go door to door to find your clients, so you call people.
Okay.
So
Mm-hmm.
calling was natural. And in the beginning, these were clients of this guy that I worked with. And so when I called and said, hey, I'm calling, I work with Dave, and I wanted to talk to you about something, they were pretty welcoming. And some weren't. But besides that, I did have to just randomly cold call people. And I did view it as a game. If they hung up on me, I kind of didn't care. I'd just call the next person.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as problem solving is, I do, even to this day, have to continually think of workarounds or use different tools of technology, or reach out to others to find out, how are they handling this issue. And in the beginning, it was more, again, the bigger issue for me was about kind of thinking about what other people were going to think of me. And it took me one entire year, until I met the first client that I did business with the year prior. I invited him to lunch, and I thought, well, by this time I've done a great job. He can't possibly want to fire me because, and not for my job, meaning, as his advisor, because I've done a great job. And that pretty much played out that, people didn't really judge me. And sometimes they asked me, like, how do I read materials? And once I started doing the job, they just had confidence that I could do the job.
That's great. That's what we all want, right? That confidence piece and building up that education and confidence is so important.
I wanted to add another piece is I did have to take a very comprehensive test called a Series 7. And so problem solving on that is you sign up for a class. Of course, this class had never had a blind person. So I called the professor and I talked to him and told him my situation. And I did use my CCTV and I did get some things in audio and I used some readers. But I sat on the floor in like my apartment for 2 weeks just reading all this material. And I did have to ask for special accommodations to take the test. And it was long. It was like an 8-hour test. It was really long. And so I did have to deal with all of those things. And I just had to keep taking my chances because I didn't have any special skill or expertise. I do have more of that now to, for nuancing things or approaching people. But it all went okay. I mean, I passed the test the first time I took it and I studied my ass off. And so, yeah.
That's great. I know some of those tests are testing in general is difficult, and then you factor in the specifics for a profession. And I know that those exams can be quite challenging.
Yeah,
so,
it was difficult.
And,
there are a couple of questions in the chat.
All right.
You want me to?
Yes,
okay.
Please.
So one of the questions is from Sally Hassan. I hope I say that correctly. What were you in college for first?
When I first went to college, I was really doing my general ed stuff and I wanted to be a lawyer. I really loved the idea of being a lawyer and I would have continued at that. By the time I dropped out of college, I was still in sort of the general ed portion, but I was taking some legal classes and I really loved that. And I think I would be a good lawyer as well as a good financial advisor. But
you could always go back to school.
Yeah, there's always that. Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I was lucky and fortunate too. Once I had my job, Wharton Business School finance department has a program that is a finance business program that professionals go to. And I got that, you mentioned the certified investment management analyst credential, and that was really neat. And I felt really honored. It was from Wharton, and I went back there for a while to do that. And I did also have to do a tremendous amount of planning. I had to communicate with those professors in advance. It was very, very hard credential to get and very hard to keep the credential. And I had to get a ton of material put in audio tape, which did not exist. They had never had a blind person in their course. And then some of the things I'd never seen, like the higher level math that's required to be a financial advisor, like standard deviation and all this stuff. And they allowed me to skip the part of really understanding what the symbols look like, but I knew the meanings and I knew how to do the math itself. They manually made you do the math. So that was wonderful, and I was really proud to have done that. And that is how I did work through that Wharton thing, by calling them and explaining that I have a different situation and how can we work it out. And the professors were great there.
That's great. That's it's always, that's, gotta advocate, educate, and that networking, I'm sure that came in handy.
Yeah. And
Any more questions,
we have
right.
This one's from Cedric Green. What accommodations do you have for your financial planner certification?
I'm not one that asks for tons of accommodations. I just have never been that way. And one of my beliefs are there's a lot of laws where employers have to do certain things. But from the beginning, it always felt like if I was going to tell them, well, by law, you have to do this, this, and this, they could secretly not hire me, obviously. And so I only ask for accommodations when I have to have them. So work, I don't have to have any special accommodations. I have JAWS. And at this point, I do have the 2 humans, but I did not have those extra humans till about 5 years ago. That came to pass because there was a merger and there was lots and lots of software merged together that was just not accessible, and they couldn't make it accessible enough, fast enough. And so right now I would say the humans, but I did do the job for many years without it. And I just use JAWS, and I do find volunteers to read for me. So a lot of it, I don't put most of it on my employer. I take the responsibility for most of it myself, like getting readers and things like that.
Okay. And let's see, we have a question from Richard. Are there role models who are blind who mentored you in any of your career paths? And can you also talk with us about your competitive nature and participating in sports?
Yeah, it was very interesting. I had called a long time ago. There was another female financial advisor right as I was pursuing this career. She was very unfriendly. She was very snooty, which I've never forgotten, as you can tell. And she was of no help. Then I found a wonderful guy, and his name was Richard. And he was so helpful and just encouraged me. And, I really felt like I could do it because he was doing it. And there was another sort of young person like me that was a male who was doing it as well. So we had each other. And I would say Richard was my biggest role model. But at that point, again, I really was adjusting to learning how to be a good or an amazing or awesome or functional, independent blind person, that just even a lot of my friends that had full-time jobs and interesting careers, they were mentors to me and inspirational. So yeah, there was a couple of people, and there were people that were not helpful, and that I hope to never be that way. I always try to be helpful. My competitive nature and my personality is a very interesting thing, because I wonder, is it a survival thing? Like in the beginning, did I learn that? Because I think I first learned that if I didn't ask and push and demand, that I wouldn't get anything I wanted. And that did seem to be the case. I remember wanting to go kayaking, and the guy was like, "Oh, blind people can't kayak." And again, there's a whole beginning of your life establishing yourself where you have this idea that other people can have some say over you, or they're the boss because they own the kayaking place. And so that's when I kind of learned, like, well, forget you, I'll just call another kayaking place or try to explain how I would go kayaking. And then I think there's a wonderful thrill, like a sense of accomplishment, that when I won that international downhill ski race, that was a feeling I'd never had, because I did always feel inferior to sighted people. And that's years of counseling, right? You go to counseling to get over that, or meet cool blind people. And so I feel like that it just gives me a sense of adrenaline, and I enjoy it. And I'm a really hard worker. So even about 10 years ago, I decided to take up competitive tandem cycling, and I got third place in the U.S. Road Nationals for women tandem cyclists, and my competitors were 20 years younger than me. And that was all about hard work and drive and the competitive nature of my personality. So I think there's some combo of it's exciting and fun. I really like to work hard. In sports, I always want to have sort of a nice body. I think that's another thing not spoken about much, that if you're blind and you look frumpy, though every category people have frumpy people, like it doesn't look as good. And we have to look at our best that we can and act our best that we can. And so through the sports, it's constant training and things like that that help me, stay in better shape than if I didn't do my sports. That was a very long answer.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
And then Jasmine has another question. What sports did you participate in?
Oh, well, I did the skiing. Where I excelled was the skiing. I continue to downhill ski. The tandem cycling, I still tandem cycle. I love rock climbing. I still rock climb, but I've never done any kind of competition. I love rafting. Crazy exciting about rafting. And I want to share a quick story, because even though I tell you all this, like, oh, go, rah, rah, and not everything's always perfect in my life either. So I went rafting I have a daughter in college last summer, and her boyfriend and the boyfriend's mom works at the rafting company, and I prefer to sit in the front on the left side of the raft because of how I can hear, and I'm really strong paddling that way, and I have tremendous experience in rafting. And I tried to reach the rafting guide, the woman that was going to be in our boat, and say, hey, I want to sit in the front left of the boat and paddle. She goes, no, you're going to sit in the back. I said, no, I'm not. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. I said, I'm super experienced rafting and there's no reason. So she and I get into this bad battle, and I'm trying to say, like, don't do this in front of your kid and the boyfriend's mother and so on and so forth. And she was just, crazy, like ableist kind of person. And I tried to use logic and say, listen, let me paddle through the first rapid. And if I don't do a good job, I'll move to the back of the boat. And she just would not relent. And I also didn't want to ruin the trip for everybody, or I would have just not gone on the raft, but that would have been bad for everybody. So I tried to not be selfish, which I preferred to be selfish. So anyhow, we go, and I don't get to ride in the front of the raft the whole way till lunch. And I try to find her alone, right? Because I don't want to embarrass her or be rude or obnoxious. And I finally said, well, like, are you ready to let me ride in the front of the raft? And she goes, well, if it's that important to you, but she wasn't really that snotty. It wasn't like, if it's that important to you. I said, it is important to me. And then she allowed me to do that. And at the end of the trip, she goes, yeah, you are one of the better rafters. She didn't really say she was sorry, but that was unfortunate. And that happens to me, happens to the best of us, people that are closed-minded or uneducated or whatever we want to label them. So yeah, it's not always peachy keen, and I don't love being blind all the time. Sometimes I find it very annoying, and it's slow, and I don't like to be slow. And so there's that whole side of the conversation besides all the fun, exciting things.
Oh, that's pretty powerful. I wish you would have apologized, but
Yeah.
it's hard to do that when she recognized she was wrong.
Oh yeah, and apparently she and I was upset because the boyfriend's mother, who works at the same company that she did, wasn't really speaking up for me. But apparently, that all came up in some management meetings after the fact, and they've changed their rules, and they're going to believe blind people if they say they are capable and have experience, and so that was a good outcome of
Oh,
that.
well,
And the
well,
trip was really fun.
yeah, well, that's good. At least there was some change made, even though it was
Yeah,
a pain, right?
exactly,
But there was some
exactly.
change made, so that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
There is another question from let's see, Ashley, and I can't see it, her last name gets cut off, so I can't. Oh, Ashley Bramlett. Okay, and it says, "Hello, thank you for presenting. I was wondering about your technology at work. Do you use Excel? What other software do you use? And have you found accessibility challenges?" There's a few questions here. Are you using JAWS or another screen reader? If there were accessibility issues, how did you work around them? Maybe use a reader. And also, are you working full time?
Yeah, so I work full time. I've worked full time for many, many years. I only use JAWS. I use all Microsoft products at work, and I am taking a college class behind the scenes, so I am learning Google. And even with all my skills, I reach out and I get training like through the New York Public Library. They are offering free training to blind people. So I sign up and I say, I want to learn how to use Google Docs, or I listen to Freedom Scientific webinars and I send emails to their training department. And at work, I use Excel, I use Word, I use Outlook. Pretty much that's it. I mean, we have our own things where we get like lots of research reports, and that's given to me. Again, it's either accessible, depends on who's pushing it out. And if it's not accessible, I send it over to the lovely women that can convert it for me to however I want it. And I do constantly seek training. I love computers. I love learning about computers, like Excel. And I have a girlfriend, my best friend in London. She taught me more about Excel. So just again, through networking, I just reach out and I spend the extra time to get more training and stay current. And I am learning all the Google Docs, and they're way more accessible than I thought they were. And that's been a lot of fun too.
Okay. All right. We don't have any more questions yet, so keep going, Katie. Oh, you put yourself on mute. There you go.
I have another thing I wanted to share, if that's okay, Katie.
I still can't hear you,
Well,
Katie,
she's
though.
still
You're
on
not
mute.
on silent, but we can't hear you.
Is that better?
Yep, there we go.
Perfect.
There we go. I was trying to comment earlier and I'm like, Oh, maybe I'm muted or unmuted, so I apologize.
Yeah,
My
No,
headphones
just
came
ignoring you.
my headphones came unplugged. All right.
Oh, I
Sorry
gotcha.
about that.
it's fine.
But Gina had another
So
comment.
Yeah,
Go
I
Gina,
ahead.
you want to
wanted to
share
say that
something? Yeah.
in real job interviews, when you go in the beginning, if you're new and you're young, just to view the job interview as like a practice, right? And again, it's going to take you 10 to 20 practices. And so the more you can get, the faster you can get interviews. And I would be persistent. I mean, I am persistent. So if I wanted a job at Panera today, all these places make you apply online. I would apply online like I was supposed to. And I would use IRA if it was not accessible, or I'd use a friend. I would find a way to get the application done. I would then saunter into Panera directly and ask for the manager and hand him my resume and say, I already applied online. You know, could you take a look at my resume and could I set up a time to talk with you about a job? I mean, I would be that direct, and no matter what kind of job it is, even if it's not, you know, a high-end financial advisor job. And I would also, when I'm in an interview, there's a lot of things that we have laws to protect us from certain things, and I disregard those laws. Like, I want to make the person want to like me and want to hire me. So I might say, you know, wow, how I read is I use a screen reader, and I have human readers if something's not accessible. So I try to give them all the information about what it is I think they're thinking or wondering about me. Like, how are you going to do it? Or how do you find the bathroom? Or, you know, anything. So I do spend a lot of time in the interviews just putting it out there, even if I don't have to, because laws and rights at the end of the day don't really matter if the person doesn't choose you, and they can like choose, you know, one from many people. So if they like you and you're friendly and engaging, they're going to want to see you again. They're going to want to give you a chance. So the goal is to want, you know, make it so they want to give you an opportunity.
Absolutely. And to that end, have you ever, taken any of your technology with you to an interview, or what are your thoughts about that, or even having the disclosing of the blindness conversation
Oh,
piece?
yeah, so I'm big at like hiding it. Not now. I wouldn't hide it now, but in the beginning I was. So with the first like professional job I got after the extra training was a word processing job in San Francisco before the financial planning stuff. And I did go to the interview. I had a guide dog at the time who I left home, and I didn't bring a cane. And I could see much better, not great, but much better. And I was going to get the job application and fill it out at home and bring it back. And the lady was just completely on to me. She's like, no, you have to fill it out here. And by the way, you have to have a typing test. But it was a dictation job, okay, a transcription job, but by dictation. So I said, well, I can't see very well, but if you read me the typing test, what you want me to type, I'll type it. So you read it and I'll type it. And she agreed, and she did hire me. And so it's hard. I think you have to disclose it in a way that it doesn't seem like such a big deal, or make it not seem like such a big deal. And I have never brought any technology with me. If I had a braille display and I knew how to use it, I would for sure bring that to take notes or to read notes, and I would show it to the person. I'd be like, hey, I have this cool device. It's a braille display, and it's how I, as a blind person, take notes and how I read notes. So during our interview, I'm going to make a few notes, and if you have any materials, you can just email me and I can read those at home. So I mean, you kind of have to disclose it if you're going to show up in person, unless you're borderline where you could hide it. Like I could have done that when I was much younger. So now I couldn't do that, and now I would say, well, I'm visually impaired, but I will do a good job. Like, I wouldn't be applying for a job if I couldn't do it. I mean, I'd probably say something like that to just sort of break the ice a little bit.
Sure. Well, we have about 15 minutes left here with our chat with Gena here on Career Conversations, and it's been great, getting to know you, Gena. Like I said, I know we've met before, and I've heard you speak on other things. Can you, you mentioned your sports and your, a lot about your work. What are some of your other hobbies? I think you have the impression you enjoy technology. I think you just attended a large technology conference.
Yes, I did. I like to go to lots of the different conferences on disabilities and technology. So I'll be going to CSUN. And yeah, I was at the ATIA, and I do try to gather lots of information. And I have a mom that's hard of hearing, so I was thinking to call what I know her name's Ola. That's not her name, but what she mentioned
Yes.
about the information and referral line, because I thought, well, I need some information on some tools and technology for a hard of hearing person. But pretty much it's mostly the sports. I love to travel. I went to London in October, and I do view all of my life as a game. So it's a game to me to go to the airport and get on the airplane. And I ask for help sometimes, and sometimes I don't ask for help. And I do have a seeing eye dog named Yuli who does lots of traveling with me and to foreign countries as well. And I just discerning if I bring her about how much paperwork and grief it's going to be to get her in the place. And then secondly, if I really want to be on vacation and try to sleep in and I don't want to take a dog out. So that's kind of my criteria, how to decide. And she's very helpful, obviously, in mobility. So I use a cane all the time if I don't use Yuli, but I am much more comfortable using Yuli. So I do try to bring her most places. But those are pretty much my hobbies. I really enjoy reading. And as I said, I'm taking a class, a sociology class, and I am having to navigate like Canvas, which is the platform at the college. And they say it's accessible, but again, there's a wide range of what is accessible, in my opinion. And so I'm having to navigate through that, and I'm having to navigate on how to take notes. I'm as we speak. I mean, earlier today I was talking to a blind friend, like how do I take notes? I only have one computer, right? So I'm trying to listen to the thing on my computer and then take notes. And so those are pretty much my hobbies. I mean, in all kinds of sports. Oh, I'm going to do a 5K at the end of February. Because I actually had an accident where I fell down some stairs. So I haven't been able to exercise for a long time. And so this is my push. Like I said, I do a lot of things to push myself. So if I sign up for a 5K, then I have to train for that 5K to do the 5K. So that's what I'm working on that too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good. You're definitely active and busy.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So sounds like Alaya, do we have any more comments or questions from our audience here in the chat tonight?
No, none from I don't see any more comments or questions. But before we do close in about 10 minutes,
Yes.
we are having another Career Conversations March the 3rd. So stay tuned
Yes, we
for
are.
yes, for that. And we'll have Ty Tamasi from APH, who is our director of equity, inclusion, and diversity, which I think she changed it.
Yes, it's
It's
abide.
called Abide, and I can't remember what that stands for.
Accessibility.
There you go.
Belonging. I is inclusion, diversity, and equity, I believe.
Well, there you go. So that'll be on March 3rd.
Yes.
And now we do
6
have
p.m.
a couple. I'm sorry. Oh, it's 6 p.m.
At 6 p.m. Eastern time. Eastern. Yes. So same time.
Same time. A couple more questions just came in. So how fast does your JAWS speak to you? And that's from Skylar Walsh.
Oh, I don't know the answer to that because I never change it, but pretty fast. My phone's like at 65 to 70 on speed, my iPhone, based on what it is I'm trying to listen to. So I don't know the answer to but it's fast. But again, I listen to things I need to retain. I need to memorize them. I need to pay attention. Like all the stuff for my job is very detail oriented, and you can't listen so fast that you're not just trying to skim the thing, you're trying to take it all in.
Yes.
Yeah. And then there is another question. Do you have multiple Braille displays for different purposes, such as one hooked to your computer and one portable one hooked to a smartphone? If so, what brand displays do you use? And also, do you use any hard copy Braille still? And if you do you use a Perkins Brailler or Sleep? I don't know. A slate. Okay,
so I have a Focus 14. As I said, I'm not a very good user of it. I learned about a year and a half ago a lot. I made this big focus to use my Braille display with my phone, but then I did have this accident where I hurt myself and I just couldn't focus on that Focus 14 at the time. And I am getting a Focus 40 because one of the things I want to take is a very complicated, because I don't do anything simple, as you can tell, math class, like trigonometry and calculus. So you can't do that on a Focus 14. And I love regular Braille printed out. I don't use much. What I do, and I don't read Braille that much because I'm busy. So I use Braille in my house with a labeler, like a 6-dot labeler. And whenever I get, say, an agenda in Braille, I always save it and I go reread it after the fact just because I want like Braille stuff to read. And I was planning to order from Bard a Braille book just to practice. I know my Braille really well, but you're obviously better the more you practice it. And I think for classes that I might want to take, I do have a Perkins Brailler that for this math, I'm going to need that. I'm not using a slate and stylus. I'm going to need the Perkins Brailler, the Focus 14. I've already learned there's a math thing called LaTeX, and that's a little code you use to make it so that sighted people can see your work. And there's also a Word thing, I forget what it's called, in Word where you can write math. And so I'm learning all those things behind the scenes. I'm not using them in a class right now. It's preparing to do that in a class. So yeah, and I would love to be more efficient with Braille display because that would be my preferred. I'm just not fast enough and I'm not good enough right now. So I just have to keep practicing.
Great. And Elia, I think we have a hand raised. We have a time?
We do have a hand raised and it's from a phone number. So I don't have a name, but let me click on allow to talk. And there you go.
There we go.
Yeah. So go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, thank you for showing us. I have an interest in finance, but I'm older now, so I kind of gave up on it. Thank you for showing me how it could be done. But the inspirational thing is all the atypical steps you took. One question I do have is how the higher math, was it really necessary at the beginning of your financial services? Is it really necessary? The things like trigonometry, calculus, I have taken statistics, but I wonder if that higher math is something that you needed early in your career.
Oh no! So you learn concepts, like they kind of tell you what beta means, and they tell you like how to apply it. So you don't have to know how to do it or anything. The Wharton credential, you did then have to know how to do R squared and beta and standard deviation, and you have to know exactly what it means. And that test, you have to manually do the math, which actually I learned a lot from doing it manually. So the trigonometry and calculus is just kind of more of a hobby thing. So I would never need that for my job. It's because I really love environmental science and I'm kind of curious about that. And so certain things I'm interested in taking require that. But it's all more for fun. And again, if it's not fun, I'm not going to do it because I know it may not be fun. I may hate it. So in the beginning, I just needed to know concepts. And in the beginning, the guy that I worked with, he was amazing, you guys. And he heard me make a personal phone call. And he was very strict on how you train for this job, which is you don't read the paper all day. You need to know 3 like current news events, like who's going to be in the Super Bowl or, who won the World Series and what's going on. So you need 3 of these things so you can chit chat properly. But anyhow, one day I made a personal phone call during the day and he wrote me a note and put it under my CCTV that said, don't make personal phone calls during the day. And instead of being offended, I appreciated that. I could see from the very beginning how all of his discipline that he wanted me to follow made me a much better financial advisor. And in the beginning, he would give me kind of a script and he would teach me stuff. I mean, that all changed. I left him at some point because we did pretty risky investments and we were honest about that. But I want to do more of the complex stuff I've been speaking about. So to do that, I had to go to a bigger firm like Morgan Stanley or Smith Barney. And at that point, I did know a lot by then. Again, you don't have to know how to do the math. You just have to know how to apply it. But now this other stuff is more that I'm just interested in it, in the environmental science stuff.
Wow.
I just have one more comment.
Yeah.
have one more
Go ahead.
comment if I can. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I wanted to ask you, I usually wouldn't give advice in this situation, but I wonder if you've considered something I'm considering, which is the braille mantis. If you haven't heard of it, I think you might.
Oh no, I
think you'll
definitely
heard that.
have, yeah, and I think Katie has one, and Jonathan Mosen
I
has one.
do.
Yeah, it's quite the conundrum for me. So one of the things at CSUN, I'm trying to understand the pros and the cons because the Mantis, I am a much faster QWERTY keyboard typist, but I also really want to excel in my Braille, so I'm a little torn, right? If I do that, I won't probably be excelling in my Braille as much as if I don't, but I'm also going to be making my life harder if I don't do that. So I appreciate that idea, and that is something I'm trying to work through, and it's not simple. I mean, at the last conference I was at, I was like, well, what's the difference between this and other ones? And the salespeople, like, they wouldn't tell me the difference, and it's like, I mean, I think you ought to know the difference in these products if you're selling them. But anyway, I didn't have much success on trying to figure out all the differences.
Well, we'll have to have a chat about that
Yes, we should.
outside of this.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your questions and for
Yeah.
attending this evening. Really appreciate that. Alaya, do we have any more hands raised? I know we just have a couple minutes, so I just want to make sure we get all the hands.
No more hands raised, but we do
think
have a
we
few more
do.
questions in the chat. Does your company pay for your readers? And this
Good
is
question.
from Kathleen O'Geeblin. I hope I said that right. Oregon Commission for the Blind.
If I needed readers, they pay for the two humans, but before I had the two humans, that all they do is sort of blindness, accessibility stuff for me and Donna, my friend Donna, the other blind woman. I was working on another credential because by now you can tell, like, I don't ever stop. So on the other credential, nothing was accessible. I finally got them to put stuff into Word so I could read it myself. But I get tired of always listening to JAWS. So I have formed a relationship with a sorority, the Delta Gamma gals, and blindness is their philanthropy. And so they live right down the street. So I just put a little post out like, oh, if anybody wants to help, I need reading. And some of them I pay if they need money, and others, they don't want me to pay them. So it depends on the situation. And I just feel like Morgan Stanley, between the two humans, that they pay for a lot and they pay for what I ask for. But I try not to ask too much. But I mean, if somebody doesn't have money and they need readers, and it's a big firm, let's say like Morgan Stanley, I think that it wouldn't be so difficult to get that paid for.
Anything else, Alaya? We have about 1 minute left. And
Let's see. From Skyla Walsh, how many personal phone calls do you make? I guess you had talked about that.
Oh, no, yeah, no, I don't make personal phone calls now, but also I'm a top producer for Morgan Stanley. Like I'm big time at Morgan Stanley. So if I want to make a personal phone call, it's completely fine because I work till 10 o'clock at night sometimes, or on the weekends always. And so that's different. I'm talking about, because I know Richard and Katie had talked about some people that are young, like entering the job force and, struggling with applying for jobs. But for me, when you get a job, you better, treat it sacred and have an amazing work ethic and work really hard, because that's how you're going to keep your job. And so I can make personal phone calls now, but I definitely don't waste my time.
absolutely. Well, I think we need to end it there, unfortunately. But thank you, Gena, so much for joining us here on Career Conversations and
Thank you for having me.
sharing your wisdom and your insight. And now we all need to go out and compete and keep on working.
Yes, and work hard.
Yes. And again, join us back here March 3rd, Thursday, March 3rd at 6 p.m. Eastern, when we will be speaking to Ty Tanasi. And thank you, Alaya, for your assistance as well. And we will wish everyone.
Richard says to tell Gena thanks.
Yes.
And because he is heading out, but he will talk soon.
Yes.
You are so welcome.
So thank you, everyone.
Yes.
Stay
Thank
safe,
you.
stay warm, and
Yes.
have a good evening.
Yes. Be safe, everyone. Good night.
All right. Thank you.
All right. I will
All
stop.
right.